Hey everyone, I'm so excited to have Selena Soo with me today again. Selena, welcome to the call.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, so for those of you who don't know Selena yet, she's been a good friend of mine. She's a superstar in the online world. Like if you're on Facebook, if you're in the online business world, you probably have seen her in some form, some way, shape, or form connected to the world of publicity. If you don't know what publicity is, it's basically, getting media attention. Like, you see all of those people being featured on Today's Show or Oprah Magazine or even, podcasts like Entrepreneur on Fire. All of those things is basically the idea behind it is to get media attention, to get your business, your brand out there in front of more people. And Selena, very simply, is the best in the industry at this.
Thank you. I just want to expand on the definition of publicity, because I think a lot of people think, I need publicity maybe when I have a book coming out or I'm several years into my business. And the way that I think about publicity, it's about creating buzz in your industry and getting people so excited about you that these influencers and media outlets want to open up their platform of 1,000, 10,000, or even 1,000,000 people to share your message and story. And so, when we are, whether we're starting out in our business or further along, like it's one thing for us to talk to people one-on-one and say, yes, I'm the best at what I do. And, kind of you be the person saying it, but it's even more powerful if you're on Entrepreneur on Fire and John Lee Dumas is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look at what Primaj is doing on Ultimate Guides, or this person's the go-to expert on X, Y, and Z. Or, you're on a list on Business Insider of the top, health coaches or business coaches to watch out for. Like there's that third party endorsement, but also there's leverage. And a lot of you understand the importance of developing leverage in your business model. I love one-on-one services, and it's great to consider things like workshops and eventually group programs. And so with publicity, you're creating leverage with your stories, your message, and your ideas.
Awesome. I love that. We'll get more into publicity in a second, but first, I just want us to tell you, I just wanted to tell us your story. Like, what's your story? Because, you were not always in this online business world.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago, I believe you were working at a nonprofit. So can you take us back in time and tell us, how you went from there to where you are today on a high level?
Yeah, definitely. So actually several years ago now, I was working at a nonprofit. And even though there were aspects of my job that I really loved, there was another part of me that was just deeply unhappy. And I was at a place in my life where I was, searching for more purpose. And, I became depressed. And so I found myself in this women's life coaching group. And during that time, I got exposed to all of these thought leaders, people like Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay. And eventually I discovered Ramit Sethi and other people like Marie Forleo. And I just became obsessed with these people. I thought, a lot of us, we're not looking for necessarily more information, but we're really looking for inspiration. And these experts, authors, thought leaders are role models. They've changed their lives and, they're helping other people do the same thing. And so, I learned so much about, finding a dream job and figuring out my money stuff by studying Ramit's material. And I just learned so much from so many different experts. And I was the kind of crazy person who would be obsessed with one of Ramit's emails and forward it to 35 people being like, you have to read this. And, I kind of dreamed that one day I would find a way to support people like that as part of my full-time job. And I went to business school because I just felt stuck in the nonprofit. I was making $42,000 a year, and I felt like I hit this glass ceiling there. And I just wanted to see what else was out there. So I knew that business school would buy me time. And while I was in business school, I actually started actively connecting with different entrepreneurs. I did some internships. I developed a relationship with Ramit Sethi, which we can go into more later. And I would reach out to these influencers, introduce myself over email, go to their, meetups, live events, and find ways to offer value. So I developed all these relationships. And even before I had an official business, people knew who I was because I was showing up for them and being helpful. And when I did start a business, I got a lot of encouragement and a lot of endorsements that really created buzz in my industry from day one. So that's, my story in a nutshell.
Okay, so where is the publicity element? How does, because, you told us your story, how you got into the entrepreneurship space, but where did you even learn about publicity? And, when did you start kind of helping people with it?
Yeah, I think, ever since I was, in college, I just kind of developed this knack of like connecting people, and I was really good at it. And even though I wasn't, it wasn't part of my job, I would connect people to, different media opportunities. I did conferences on campus, and I brought really well-known speakers, and I would later connect them to each other and to other opportunities. And so it was something that just came very naturally to me. I wasn't formally trained in PR, but I would meet these people that I was so excited about, and I wanted to be helpful to them. And I was like, oh my God, this person needs to know you. This media outlet needs to know you. And so I just started doing it. And as you do it consistently, you get better over time. And so, yeah, that's how it started. And also, became friends with a lot of people in the media industry, magazine editors. When I was at Columbia University as an undergrad, like the people that would invite to conferences, like these editor-in-chiefs, they would bring their editorial assistants. Well, today, like, I don't know, like, what is it, 14 years later, like these people are now like executive editors and editor-in-chiefs, So yeah, I've been actively building this media network and having a lot of conversations with them about kind of what they're looking for, what they would need in a pitch. And I've also pitched a lot of people to them. So yeah, I got better and better just through experience and getting results and seeing what works.
Was there a time when you weren't good at it? Because, of course, like when you practice something, you get better. But what was like your early experience like? And what were some of your biggest challenges when you were starting out, just like learning about publicity and things like that?
I think like one of my challenges was, there are certain people that I'm so excited about. Like I've always been and still am a huge super fan of Ramit's. And I remember, trying to pitch him to someone at Fortune and letting them know about his BehaviorCon event. And, it just wasn't something that they were that interested in. And also Fortune, it targets a lot of people who are, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, more kind of traditional, either entrepreneur or corporate backgrounds. So there were things that I just felt like were so valuable that everyone needed to know about, but other people weren't as interested because maybe it wasn't the right target audience, or I wasn't positioning it in the right way. The other thing that has been a challenge for me, but I've been able to, it's fine now, is that, I like some of the people who I love, like Ryan Levesque was a mentor. He talks about survey funnels, or, all these other people I know talk about pretty advanced stuff. And you have to realize if you're pitching mainstream media, the average person isn't like an advanced internet marketer, so it doesn't really resonate. And I remember Ryan Levesque saying to me, one day I have a dream that everyone will have a survey funnel on their website, And it's like, that's cool for like us nerds, but like for mainstream media, they're like, what, a survey funnel? Like, what's that, And so, a lot of media, like they're targeting beginner level people, which means people that are interested in learning about side hustles or starting a business. So when I'm pitching business people, a lot of the topics are geared towards that, and they can be really still intelligent and in depth, but it's about like tweaking your messaging and your store ideas to fit that target audience.
Okay, so let's actually take a real example. So, a lot of us have businesses that are about this really, weird, nerdy stuff, like, Ryan Levesque and his, survey funnels. For me, it's maybe Ultimate Guides, which is not something that necessarily someone at Forbes, wants to write about, or like, I'm not going to be on TV in Slovenia and talk about Ultimate Guides.
Yeah.
So 2 questions around that. One, how can we, does that mean we can't even get media attention? Does that mean that like, today's show will never want to have me? And if the answer to that is no, then what can I do about it? And then second of all, if we, let's say adjust our ideas to fit more of like a mainstream media, like let's say we do share our story more, how do we then get, the people to our business who are interested in our nerdy stuff? How do we make sure that media is actually going to convert into paying customers?
Yeah. I have so many thoughts on that. So I have this concept that I've developed called the publicity pyramid. And so there's basically different, levels of media. So a lot of people come to me and say, Selena, I want to be on the Today Show. I want to be interviewed by Oprah. I'm a life coach, and I feel like, I want to be the next Marianne Williamson or whatever it is. And it's great to have that vision and that dream, but that's not your first stop with publicity. You really want to approach publicity in a systematic way that builds upon, each other. So like the best place to start is with guest posts. Now, the reason why guest posts are so great is because before you share your ideas out there, like you really want to be able to clarify them through writing, and the great thing about writing a guest post is that you could have a friend, a colleague, or a team member like look at it, give you feedback, edit it. you have a lot of control and you can really share your thought leadership in an in-depth way. And a lot of these sites that accept guest posts like, Forbes, Mind Body Green, Huffington Post, Business Insider, these are household names. So once you get like one or two of these hits, it's like extremely impressive. You can say in your bio, I've been featured. Oh, there's my cat. I've been featured in Forbes and Business Insider. People are going to be so impressed. It's a huge credibility marker. Now, after you've written about your story ideas, your personal story, how you help people, your philosophy in depth, then the next level is podcast interviews and video. Because, now you're going from kind of long form writing to long form conversation. But I remember the first time I did a podcast interview, like I was feeling a bit nervous, to talk about my story and my philosophy. But because I had been writing different guest posts and writing blogs for my newsletter and expressing my ideas and refining them already, it started to develop more confidence around that. Now, what I love about podcasts is that this is really a great form of niche media to get in front of your ideal clients. So on the one hand, like a podcast that you might love, like Smart Passive Income, might not be the same kind of household name as Forbes, but it can really put you in front of your ideal clients. People that spend 30 minutes or an hour listening to a podcast interview are people that carve out time for themselves. They invest in themselves. These are people that are more likely to sign up for high-end coaching services, group programs, one-on-one services, and so forth. Then after podcasts, next is magazines. Now with magazines are harder to get into because there are fewer issues, but if you can say that, you were in a magazine, like a mainstream magazine, that can help with a future book deal because the publisher is going to see like, wow, this person has mainstream appeal. They've already secured placements in this place, that place. So it can help you get a bigger advance. And then at the highest level, it's TV. And with TV interviews, sometimes they're as short as 90 seconds to 3 minutes. So, to go from like an hour-long podcast to a 90-second, interview, you really need to have your talking points down. And you also have to be very, ready for camera. So that's why, I encourage people to work up to that. And imagine like someone at the Today Show or the Oprah Winfrey Show, or not Oprah Winfrey anymore, but like the Super Soul Sunday, where like, oh, we've heard that you're a top, life coach or some kind of expert, and they're considering you, and they go online and they see what you're up to, or they ask you to share like the media that you've gotten, and you literally have nothing, like no guest posts, no podcasts, no like magazine mentions, like nothing. You're not going to be seen as the go-to expert. But with, with podcasts and with guest posts, which are at the base of the publicity pyramid, you can get started now. And those ones are more connected in the short term to really, getting your ideal clients that can, buy from you.
Okay, awesome. So in terms of, getting your ideal clients, how do we think about it? Because, whenever you do a guest post, that means like, you might get lots of email subscribers, or like whenever you do a podcast, you might, even if you don't get, hundreds of email subscribers, you might have just those few people that are willing to listen to this 90-minute conversation with you, and you might get a few clients out of them. But then what happens, when you do go to that more mainstream media, and maybe you don't even have the time to mention your expertise, like how does that convert, into your business growth?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times, with guest posts, you can include some kind of link back to your site, whether it's a link back to your main website or a link back to your free gift. And also sometimes, they are talking about your expertise. It just depends, it has to be targeted to their audience. Or other times they're saying, it might be like a rags to riches story, like in your case, like someone who went from making, $7 an hour to now selling, premium online courses. So that would be a part of your intro, and you would be like, recognized as a huge success story that has raving fans, raving reviews, but they might not go in depth into like how ultimate guides work, but they would kind of position you as this authority figure, and then people can click on that and check out your website. And, a lot of people, like, especially the people that are willing to pay, they want to work with the best, so if someone is recognized in these places, it really means something to them. Whenever I get media hits, I always share it with my audience. And people have said like, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed by this piece you had in Fast Company. Or I saw that you were on, sweetheart, I saw that you were on Entrepreneur on Fire. Sometimes I don't even listen to it, but the fact that they see it, like they're so excited, and they can see that you're going places. And then also, if you have like group programs that target beginners, then, these guest post opportunities can really speak to their needs. But, I recently wrote a piece for Forbes. It's going to be going out soon on how to get amazing referral partners for your business. And I mean, that is a topic that's applicable if you're just getting started. And also if you have a 7-figure business, or if you have like $100,000 program and you're looking for people to refer others to you, so some of these topics that have broader appeal can target to both advanced people as well as more, beginner level people.
I love it. So I think, basically what you're doing, even if once you do get the more mainstream media, the thing is like so many people will start talking about you, and maybe not everybody who reads about me on Forbes will be interested in Ultimate Guides. And maybe that's okay. Maybe they're not going to come to my website, and the first thing is going to be Ultimate Guides. Maybe as my business grows, I don't anymore talk about Ultimate Guides on my front page, but I talk about like, hey, you want to start a business. Like I went for $7 per hour, to creating these courses, and you kind of get people in on the journey. And then maybe later down the line, there's, they get to know me, they get to learn that Ultimate Guides are important. And that, at a certain point in the process, that's when, they might join one of my programs, or they might join another more beginner program. But, what do you think about?
And I totally agree with you. Yeah, exactly. Like, not everybody has to convert into a subscriber right away. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been on my email list for like a year or two, and they're following me, or maybe there are people who are, new to the world of online entrepreneurship, but I'm the person that introduces them to it. They may not sign up right away, but they will down the road. I mean, if we're just targeting people who only are passionate about entrepreneurship, that's a limited pool, because there's a whole world of people that could be inspired by your story. They could benefit from your knowledge. So, sometimes you want to go deep within your industry, but also, there's definitely value in growing broad as well. So kind of doing both strategies at once.
Okay, awesome. So we talked about publicity, and, we already talked about it also in the past. Like publicity can do great things for you. It can bring you clients, it can bring you email subscribers, it can add more credibility, helps you get more publicity as you climb up that pyramid. There's lots of benefits that come, from it. Now, in terms of learning it, it's something that you obviously do get better over time with more practice, but can you really zoom in on that process for us? Like, let's say I've never done publicity, but I know how valuable it is. What's the best way for me to start getting better at it?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to start getting better is to learn like a step-by-step process to getting publicity. So, I teach people like the strategy around figuring out where's the right publicity for you, which kind of media outlets are actually going to be interested in you, as well as which ones will move the needle in growing your business, whether you are, looking to get a book deal or sell, high-end programs or something else. And then in terms of pitching, I think it's really valuable to be able to get feedback from people. Like first you just start off with like a system, like, okay, these are the steps I take. Here are some examples of how to do it right. Here are a bunch of pitches that are really amazing. And then even better, having an opportunity for someone to give you feedback on your pitches so that you can improve. For me, like I have a lot of relationships with the different, podcast hosts and magazine editors and things like that. And some of these relationships, a lot of them, you develop over time. So when I pitch someone, it's not like, I don't know, I also try to find ways to add value if possible, even before I pitch them, especially podcast hosts who tend to be entrepreneurs, in our industry. So, there are a lot of people who I have like a friendly relationship with, and they turn someone down. I'd be like, oh, can you give me some feedback? And I learned, okay, they didn't like this. And I start to see, oh, but they like that, So that really has been very helpful. And, even though, I teach other people publicity, if I've got like a really big pitch that I'm sending out that's high stakes, like I will ask other people in my world to look at it, whether it's my friends that work at these top media publications or, people on my team. I feel like, I heard this term, like the best copywriting happens in teams. And I think also with pitching emails, if it's something that's high stakes, it's very valuable to have someone else look at it. Because sometimes you're like so close to your work that you maybe can't see something that's missing, or maybe hard to see a way to make the pitch better.
Awesome. I actually want to dig into this because I know most people will, in this situation, they'll just move on. But I do think, for my audience, they know that these small details, like, reaching out to a friend for feedback or reaching out to a podcaster for feedback, they can give you this great insights that can really help improve your skills. And that makes things in the, future so much easier. For example, just, yesterday, I think, you sent me an email, with feedback on my Entrepreneur on Fire interview. And I really deeply appreciated that. Because it helped me identify one thing that I was doing really well and two things that I could do better in the future. And that's just so much better than just mindlessly doing 10 more podcasts. Because I could have
Yeah.
done 10 more podcasts, but they would be the same level of quality. I wouldn't be able to improve if I didn't, get that feedback. So I do want to dig into like the asking for feedback part. And actually, let's do it in two ways. First,
Yeah.
you mentioned that, whenever your pitch would get turned down, you would ask for feedback on it. First of all, what's your mentality around that? What are you thinking about in that moment? Because I know some people would think like, well, they turned me down, so obviously they don't want to talk to me anymore, or they didn't like my stuff, or they didn't respond. So what's your mentality around that? And then how do you actually ask them for feedback without, feeling too needy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if someone turns down a pitch, there are several other people who would want the pitch. So it's it's so great if you can get feedback. So yeah, I remember pitching someone for Art of the Charm, and it's a podcast, and I felt like they would be really great for it. And so I sent the pitch off, my contact said no. And I was like, can you share a bit more why? And he just said like, like what they're doing is pretty generic. Like, I don't feel like, it doesn't really seem that extraordinary or different or special, So that was really helpful to know. And these people had like interesting mentors, so that was cool. But it was like, well, I could just interview their mentors. Like the fact that they work with them in this case isn't enough, because they need to have their own, a stronger story to kind of back it up. So that was really helpful to know. There was one person in my one of my group programs on Publicity, and she pitched a podcast host, and he turned her down. And she reached out and said, thank you so much for getting back to me, for your honesty. I'm just curious, can you give me some insight into why my, podcast pitch wasn't accepted? And this person was like very transparent. I think he had just read a book about like radical honesty. And so he like really gave it to her. And I was like, oh my gosh. But basically he was saying, like with his, like, so when someone is featuring you on a podcast, like you should just assume that they're giving you $500 worth of marketing services. When maybe they have to edit the interview, they have to create the show notes, they have to publicize the interview, they have to prepare for it. There's all these things. It's at least $500, if not more, right? And with these podcast hosts, like they're also business owners, and they've worked really hard to develop their community. And so they want to feature people, but they want to know that that other person will bring something strong to the table, whether they've got like this incredible story, this amazing personality, or, an audience, right? And so the person that pitched this podcast host, she, there wasn't a relationship beforehand. Like she hadn't, because like some of the things that you could do is you could leave like, a 5-star like iTunes review. You could, tweet their podcast interviews. You could give shout outs on Facebook. You could comment on their blog. You could do little things like that to get on their radar, but she hadn't done that. And like the first outreach was like, hi, I would like to be on your podcast. This is what I would like to talk about. And it was kind of like very me centered. And the other thing is when he looked her up, like, I believe like on her website, there wasn't much information. Like some people like, and there's different ways that people kind of sabotage themselves. Like some people, they don't have their photo on their website, and yet they're a personal brand, but they're trying to lead more with the information. So someone is interviewing you, it's like, they don't even know what you look like. They don't get a sense of you. It wasn't clear. Like he looked her up on Facebook. Didn't seem like she was like very engaged. So, it wasn't clear she would bring that audience or really like, if she was the ultimate expert. And I don't want people to be afraid and think I need the perfect website in order to get these opportunities, because, I've had the same website for 5.5 years. I just recently updated it, and there's definitely things I didn't like about it. But you do need some basic information to share about your expertise, photo of you, different credibility markers. And so a lot of times we have this stuff, but we just don't remember to bring it out in our pitches. And so for those different reasons, she wasn't, top on his consideration list. And I thought that was very great that he was willing to be so honest.
I love that. So can you talk to us more about, the psychology of getting feedback? Because I know, like with working with you in the past, you're probably, of all the people I know, you ask for feedback the most. Like I've seen you get help, with headlines, with sales pages, sales emails, sales funnels, like even, as you've said, like interviews or sales copy or pitches, like all of these things. And most people don't do that. So what goes on through your mind, so that you do all of these things?
Yeah, I think I really have this passion for excellence and getting better and better. And I know that, I'm not perfect. None of us are. And that I'll only get better with feedback. So with podcast interviews, definitely when I was getting started, I would have my copywriter listen to them, other members of my team, and they would let me know like what they found interesting, where they felt I could improve. So that was one of the ways that I got better. Like, you know, there's like a video series that I'm launching soon. And, you know, the headline is really important. You know, it has to convert. We're going to be running some Facebook ads to it. And so like I went to like the Zero to Launch group and said, here are my five different headline ideas, you know, for this, you know, video workshop. Which one do you like the best? And I created a poll. And like within 20 minutes, people were like filling out the poll. I had multiple answers. And I posted it not just in one group, but in like 2 or 3 groups. So I was getting lots of feedback, and within an hour, I could make a decision quickly versus just like kind of not really knowing. You know, what I'm doing with the video series that I'm releasing, which actually Primaj, you know, helped me so much with it and fine tune it, gave me so much feedback. You know, I knew that like I wanted to make it really good. And so that's why I asked you. And, you know, I kind of pay attention to who gives good feedback, because not all good feedback is created equal. So there's certain people that I'll like personally reach out to and be like, hey, would you be willing to, you know, listen or check out this video script? Or would you be interested in possibly like listening to my webinar and things like that? You know, there's a lot of people that say things to me like, oh, Selena, I would love to help you in some way. And I pay attention to who says that. You know, I might not have something right away, but if I know this person is like smart, they could provide good feedback, then, you know, there's definitely a chance I'll like, you know, potentially hit them up at some point. Like there was this guy, Zach Arnold, actually, who I met through Zero to Launch, and he was at Forefront, and he was like, you know, I've got a background in video production and storytelling, and I would love to help with your video series, you know, in any way. So a couple months later, you know, I reached out to him. And yeah, I mean, it's just helped me so much.
Awesome. I love it. You mentioned you have this passion for excellence. Was it always that way?
Yeah, it has been. I'm trying to, you know, think about where it started. I know that when I grew up in Hong Kong until I was 14, I was kind of like average. You know, there were a lot of really smart people in my school. And then when I came to the States, I went to a boarding school in Tacoma, Washington. And I was just like kind of a nerd. I was afraid to interact with my other classmates. You know, some of these girls that were at the boarding school were, you know, they were kind of delinquent. They had like boyfriends really young. They were having sex and, you know, that kind of thing. So they were like sent to this boarding school, and I was there, and I was just like scared of people. And, but the cool thing is, like in Hong Kong, we were like a little bit further ahead in topics like math. And so I went from being average to like being the #1 person in my entire grade. And that was really exciting. And I really enjoyed taking on that identity. And especially since I felt like I could really connect with other people, I just threw myself into work. And I ended up being the only person in my class to get into an Ivy League college, you know, which the one that I went to was Columbia University in New York City. So yeah, it definitely paid off. And then I think also, you know, my dad, he was a stockbroker. And at one point he was the vice chairman of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And when he was younger, he was one of the first Chinese people to go to Oxford University. It was in the newspaper. And so he's always kind of had high standards for himself and for our family. And not that he put pressure on me to have a particular career or whatever it is, but I think I was surrounded by high achievers. And so for me, that was just, it became the norm over time.
Interesting. So you mentioned, you know, that when you came to US, you know, you were one of the top people at math, even though earlier, you know, maybe you weren't. But like, what do you think, what was the difference between the, you know, system in Hong Kong versus the system here? Or, you know, what do you think is that reason that you became so good in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, they just moved through math quicker. We were kind of like 1 or 2 grades ahead of where people were in the US.
Does that mean, like, if you move through it quicker, does it mean like you would go for the same amount of materials in a short amount of time? Would you practice more? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like,
no, well, I'm not quite recalling, but like, for example, like trigonometry, you know, is something that, you know, I already learned when I was in Hong Kong. And then when I went to, you know, boarding school, I was like, we were being introduced and taught how to do that. And I already like knew how to do it, you know? And so I just kind of had like a bit of a head start. But to be honest, like math isn't really the topic that I'm particularly good at. I'm more of like a words person, you know, English, social studies. But I ended up being, you know, really good at math just because I'd already learned what we were learning in class.
Yes. And then you mentioned like when you got there and you saw that you were, really good at something, you got really excited. So what did you do afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, let's see, when I was in high school, played competitive sports. My favorite was running cross country, so that was awesome. And I remember the first time, like, I ran a mile, I thought I was going to die. Like, I never run that much in my life. But then eventually, as I started training, I was running 3 miles or even 10 miles. And I also remember like competing once and, like, let's say I don't know, my time was usually, I'm totally forgetting, but let's say like 25 minutes. And then one day I was competing and there were different people that I was competing against. And I started like following this one person, and I was like, I just need to just like kind of like, just be right behind her. And I used her to like kind of push me. And I don't know, that was when I got like my fastest race ever. So that was interesting, when you have like a leader or someone who is like doing better and you're like, okay, like that's going to be like my guide. That helped me become really good at cross country. But I think that, yes, I mean, what did I do with it? I mean, yeah, it was great, like to, win like these cross country competitions, to be number one in my class. I had a perfect 4.0 GPA all throughout high school. I mean, I was such a nerd. And in college, I was a nerd too. I definitely, spent more time in the library than going to parties. I was probably like one of the least like social people, which is kind of funny because nowadays, like I organize all these influencer dinner parties and bring people together. But I think, I've always been like fascinated by the world of like ideas. I just love like intellectual activity and really deep conversations. And I felt like the things that I was learning in college were just so interesting to me. So I was more interested in that than like going out to drink. And like today, I get to work with so many interesting entrepreneurs who've got personal brands, who are thought leaders, who are authors, who've got online courses. And it's just so much fun to help them. And I just really love what people are doing. I love like the exchange of ideas. So I think that's part of the reason why I can appear sometimes to be more social. But definitely like deep down, I'm a diehard introvert.
Okay, awesome. So tell me more about, you mentioned like you have this passion for excellence. You talked about like, how you were a nerd and you spent all of this time, like more time in the library and learning new concepts and everything. And I do think that's actually one of your superpowers because I don't think personally, like, I think the people who are the most successful in business, they have some kind of an obsession with learning, with knowledge, with
Yeah.
practice, with getting better at something. And like, you're definitely one of those people who is improving super fast because you spend the time learning, because you get the feedback. You're basically running your business like a violinist would be getting better at violin or something like that. You're using a lot of those concepts. Can you talk more about, and I know this might not be intuitive because you don't think about it on a day-to-day basis, but like
Yeah.
in your day-to-day, what do you do differently than most people, and how does this excellence really show up? Can you share some examples with us?
Yeah. What do I do differently from people day to day? I mean, I think one of the things is like, I really have like a very strong inborn sense of urgency. So a lot of people, they have ideas, but they don't really take action quickly. Like I'm really good at getting things off the ground and like seizing opportunities, So I think a lot of business is about seizing the right opportunities, and also being someone that people really love and want to help. So I mean, I spend a lot of my day connecting people. Like, for example, I recently discovered this magazine, or not magazine, but this contributor at Forbes, and her focus is on millennials and side hustles. And, that's awesome because right now at Forbes, like a lot of people can only cover a particular beat. So those are her two topics. For someone else at Forbes, it might be their topic is like mental health and entrepreneurship. So I found this person that's perfect, for so many of my students, my clients and friends. And so, I've been pitching her like some of my clients. So then I thought, let me reach out to kind of a broader circle of people and see if I can help them get an article in Forbes. Some of these are my star students, my really close friends, and I want to be able to help them. And so like, rather than just reaching out to one person, like I reached out to 15 people. but it was like the same email, and it was like kind of tweaked. It might be like, oh, hi, so-and-so, I was just thinking of you. It was so great to see you at Vegas at my event. Or, hi, so-and-so, it was so great to catch up, over coffee the other day, or congratulations on your launch, whatever it is. And then the same thing, like, I have this, contributor that I met, and I was thinking that, wanted to see if you might be interested in an article in Forbes. If so, I would love to pitch you, here's, what you would need. And so like I'm building relationships with 15 people at a time. And some people are really busy and they don't have the time to even pitch, but others are like, oh my gosh, I want to seize that opportunity, so that was with Forbes. My friend, Jess Nazarelli, told me that she was looking for more podcast guests. So I, again, reached out to 15 people, some of the same, some different. That maybe there is like a cool event that that I want to go to. Maybe I'll reach out to another like 15 friends. Hey, I'm going to this event. Do you want to come to me? So, by doing it in kind of like a concentrated way and making the same offer to like multiple people, it's like I'm potentially like connecting deeply with 45 people in the course of like 2 or 3 days versus just 3 people if I were reaching out to one-on-one, or 0 people if I wasn't someone who was connecting the dots between ideas and opportunities and people. So, when you do that every single day, it's like, you can add massive value to like well over 100 people, in a month or 2. And so that's kind of having those deep, being someone who is a giver, then it's easy for me to ask for little support or feedback or something, and not that I even necessarily ask them all the time, but I've just built all this goodwill. And then it also makes me, it's easier for me to also refer people to them, so like with Danielle Laporte, her book, White Hot Truth, came out, and I wanted to help her sell more books. And so I ended up working with her on her influencer marketing campaign. And I was like, rather than obviously selling one book at a time, let's do bulk buys. Let's do a bulk book buy for 100 books, 250 books, 500 books. And I posted it in this group called Rockstar 100 that has about 100 coaches. And, I knew that like we had to craft these packages that would be interesting to them. So at first, their team was like, oh, let's give away this info product or this whatever. And I was like, no, people like, they want you, Danielle, so we need to kind of make it a really cool offering. And so, for the 100 book level, it was that you get to do a 30-minute interview with Danielle for your podcast, or it could be a private session for your mastermind group, or it could be a bonus for your online course. And, you can use Danielle in the marketing of the course, and you can use it to sell more students into your program. So, if someone's program is $2,000 and it costs $2,000 to buy 100 books, then it's like if you sell one more unit, it's worthwhile. And now you've got the affiliation with Danielle and the additional bonus and the additional value you're adding to people. And then the next level was for 250 books, so that was $5,000, was a 45-minute group call with Danielle, and then a 30-minute, I believe it was like a 30-minute one-on-one with her, where she could just get to know you. Because I know from my research, that people just want to connect with the people that they admire and feel like they know that they exist, they appreciate them, whatever it is. And then for 500 books, it was you get an hour one-on-one with Danielle, and you get the, the 1 hour group call. And actually for the 2 levels, the 2 highest levels, there was also like a kind of like a small group virtual mastermind where she would be sharing how she got on Oprah magazine, or how she became Oprah's Super Soul 100 member, and how, she's gotten 5 million viewers to her website. So I created the whole thing because I understand people's psychology. Anyways, I put it in the Facebook group. I wrote it really well. And tons of people were like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to Danielle. And I helped her sell about 7,000 to 8,000 copies of her book through just my influencer outreach. And the bulk of it was honestly just putting one post in the Facebook group. And so like, if it was, I don't know, they said it was like I think they said it was 7,800. So like 8,000 bucks, $20 a book. What is that? So like is that $16,000? Yeah. And it didn't take me that much time, but I think more than I sold $16,000 worth of, there's $160,000. Might be $160,000. I don't know. My math's not very good. But the bigger point is that, she had all of these people who were like, became her biggest fans. They were publicizing her to their mastermind clients, their audiences. They were building buzz around the book. They were promoting it in addition to like paying to be a book partner. And so again, that's something that doesn't take a lot of time for me. I mean, it did take some time, but to like connect them all. but I did it in a very efficient, powerful way. And it became one of the main, one of the most significant things in the entire book launch. So I think I do a lot of big things for people, but I do them in ways that I know like are really smart, that it's like an opportunity that they're going to be excited about, but I'm also doing it in a leveraged way so it doesn't take up that much of my time.
I love this. I love your example of like, most people would maybe, reach out and recommend this one person, but you could recommend 15. It's almost like the rule of 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's something, because you always, we both agree on the idea of going above and beyond for people. I love that you share these examples because that's how you actually do it. Like, it's so practical. It's like you're doing this already. You're writing this email already. Instead of sending it to one person, you send it out to 15 people. And then probably over time, it gets more intuitive. Probably over time, because you're building all of these relationships, you actually know more people who are a great fit for Forbes because you're, building these really tight relationships all the time. And, maybe right now, like I maybe don't know 15 people that would be great for Forbes. But let's say I start with 5 people and I start recommending people. And then, I build relationships, 5 more. It just blows up exponentially and you can keep adding more and more value to people.
Yeah. Like, so for example, think about like, how long it would take me to do this. So let's say for me to get someone in Forbes, like it could take me, I've got a really good contact. Maybe it takes me like 30 minutes because I have the other people supply the story ideas to me. And then I just pitch those. So, maybe it takes me like 30 minutes to reach out to the person, see if they're interested. They send me the story ideas. We go back and forth a little bit. And then I send it over to my contact there. After I do it once, it's like I use essentially the same email over and over again. And then it gets quicker. Then maybe it's like, maybe it ends up being 15 minutes per person. So like well, actually no, less, because I send the email out to so many people. So maybe it takes me 2 hours or something like that to help like, I don't know, like 20 people. But, if I were to help like 20 people individually with something brand new, like Forbes, Fast Company, this, or searching for opportunities, it could take like half an hour to an hour each, so it could be like a 20-hour thing, but instead of doing it in this batch way, it's like a 2-hour thing.
I love that. You also mentioned, that one of the things you have when we, before to pre-frame this conversation, you mentioned you have this deep sense of urgency, when it comes to ideas like this. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah. I think that, momentum is really important in your business. And yeah, I feel like it's important to, seize on opportunities. So, if you want to be seen as that go-to expert, like it's important to, get publicity, to be endorsed, to be putting your name out there, to be doing all these things, I don't know. I just feel like, for example, with publicity, there's this power in like I think Derek Halpern calls it like the saturation effect, So like if people see like, oh my gosh, in a single month, like I saw Selena in like 17 different places, holy like cow, she's like blowing up. But if they see you in multiple places over like 3 years, it doesn't have that same power. So that's just one example. So with publicity, and I've got a launch coming up, I'm going to be on a lot of podcasts. Like people are going to see me everywhere. They're going to see my ads everywhere. But people are really drawn to like that, right? And also like speed. If you're the kind of person who's produced results quickly in your business and produce results quickly for clients, people are going to be more likely to want to work with you than someone who takes a lot longer to achieve results. Another thing that's interesting, it's kind of related, but yeah, so I have a lot of testimonials for my website. I've got testimonials from people like Marie Forleo and Derek Halpern, 2 of my most favorite people. And I remember, someone saying to me like, wow, I can't believe you got a testimonial from Marie. And the person who said that to me was actually in her mastermind program. And, I think Marie's mastermind was this was several years ago, like $25,000, and Marie was her coach. So the thing is, like, she could have gotten a testimonial. The only thing is that she never asked. And sometimes people ask, but they don't even showcase a testimonial very prominently, And I think if I were to ask Marie today at this point, and also we're not in touch in the same way that we were before, I don't know if she would give me a testimonial. And also Derek, I asked him early on, I have a very good friend who's asked Derek, who's good friends with him too, for a testimonial. And he says, oh, I don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? So I seized the opportunity quickly. I also have a friend who writes for Inc. and she was publishing so many articles about, my friends and online business. And then she recently told me, you know what, I'm leaving Inc. So I'm no longer writing my column there. So it's like good thing that while the opportunity was available, I seized it. because now, like, I try to picture, like, there's not going to be any articles because she's not writing for them. If I try to ask for people for testimonials or Lewis Howes, like, it's going to be a lot harder at this point, but I already got all the testimonials. So, and that leads to, like, when is the right time to ask for help? Because in some cases you do want to wait, but then there's going to be other opportunities where you just don't want to wait forever.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I think it's a great example, and it really shows the importance of why, this urgency matters, because, the further and further away from the moment that you go, the less likely you're probably going to do it, and the less likely people are to say yes, right? And, if you reach out like 3 years later and like, hey, can I have your testimonial? And you haven't really talked, or like, it's awkward, and you're probably, it's not going to come off as well. So did you think, like, in terms of this sense of urgency, did you always have it, or do you think you developed it over time? And if yes, how?
Yeah, I think I developed it when I was in high school, when I wanted to be number one, because I think that's connected to a sense of urgency and drive. I always wanted, and since then I've always wanted to be like number one. And I don't know, it's a really good quality, and it can be a bad quality sometimes because you push yourself so much for that achievement. But yeah, I developed it in high school, and even in the online world. It's like, and it's not like I want to be number one over other people, but I want to be my version of number one. I want to reach my fullest potential and see what's possible. For me, it was so exciting to see people like Ramit and Marie Forleo and all these people doing cool things. And I was like, wow, this is great. I want to support them and cheerlead, be their number one cheerleader. And then over time, I was like, hey, I want to grow a business, that is similar to theirs in some way. And, as I start hitting these different milestones, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I think I could make it. I remember talking to Ramit one day about something, and he said to me, like, you're going to have a 7-figure business. And I was like, what? Like, it blew my mind. Maybe I was bringing in 200,000, but at that time, like, I guess now in the online world, we hear these numbers more, but I was making $40,000 a year. So someone telling me, oh, you can bring in $1 million in a year. It's like mind blowing, but it meant so much, that Ramit said that to me. And I remember, like, Derek Halpern saying to me one day, he's like, you're going to make it. There's a lot of people that try to, like, make it to the top at, like, the Marie Forleo, Lewis Howes level, but he's like, you're going to make it.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they said that? Did they ever tell you why?
I know, like, one time Ramit and Derek were talking about me, and Derek was like, there's no one better at building relationships than Selena, which is kind of funny because with certain aspects of, like, networking, I'm really bad. Like, I really suck at small talk. And I was at this dinner party once, not one that I hosted, and I just, like, I didn't really have that much to say. And one person there was, like, so excited to see me because, he kind of saw me as someone well-known in my industry, and he was a huge deal himself. And at one point he was like, hey, Selena, are you there with us? Like, I think he was kind of weirded out that I wasn't more talkative. So, I'm definitely not perfect, but then I think when it comes to, like, kind of deeply building relationships in a really meaningful way, I'm super good at that and really good at, like, one-on-one. So I think that Derek just saw, like, how I was building relationships with people. And the other thing is he saw how passionate my students were about me. So he spoke at one of my live events. And afterwards, like, he was talking to my students, and they were all raving about my program, the results they got. And he was like, damn, So, those are, like, kind of, those are two of the most important things you want to have. You want to have powerful relationships with people who can support you in getting to the next level. And then your content's got to be good, And so, yeah, I think those were, like, the two things. And then he also knew that I was very hardworking.
Yeah, I love all of it. And like, the thing that I have been hearing throughout this conversation is just, when we think publicity, like, maybe, if you're not in this world of publicity yet, you think about, like, oh, like this big corporations, like, Oprah and all these people.
Yeah.
But, like, what I found, and I think, like, what you found as well, is, like, it's just human beings, all of these editors at Forbes. It's just like, it's regular human beings, just like you. You have a conversation, you have cool stuff to share, and they share it with the world. And, like, because you're really good at building relationships, and it's also one of the few things that you do teach to people really, really well in your influence course, like, that's why it goes so well together. And it's not so much pitching these big publications, it's really just making new friends and exchanging influence, right?
Exactly.
Now, one last question that I want to ask you today. It's something that I've noticed. It's one of the biggest obstacles, for people for getting more publicity and getting their name out there and getting their ideas out there. And it's definitely something that I personally struggle with as well, which is the idea of putting yourself out there. Especially if you have some social anxiety, if you're introverted, if it drains you to even, think about pitching people, if it's like really hard, how do you get over that, fear of putting yourself out there? Like if there was one way in which, and I'm not looking for a magical solution because I know there's no magical solution for it, but like what's one way in which you can get better at it so you can get really good over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to do the thing that scares you. And after you do it for the first time, it's not as scary the next time. I mean, I have so many examples of this. But one example is, early on when I started my business, I had a dream of hosting my own workshop at my place. I had, been a part of this women's life coaching group that kind of opened up my world. I saw that other entrepreneurs were doing these events and workshops. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a workshop. And I announced it on Facebook. And at the time, more people would see what you post on Facebook. And then I also shared it to the 150 newsletter subscribers on my list. And I got, 7 people signing up for the workshop. And, it was so crazy because just right before I started my business, when I was in business school, I was so terrified of public speaking. I would, my legs would kind of shake when I was in front of the classroom. And we had to introduce ourselves even to a group of 6 people in a little circle. The whole time I was in my head mentally rehearsing what I was going to say because I just was so uncomfortable with people's eyes on me. And so it was kind of a bit crazy that I was like, okay, let me do a 2-day workshop. Let me talk to you for 2 days when I was uncomfortable talking for 20 seconds. But sometimes I do those crazy things. And I think that, a part of it is on the one hand, yes, being scared, terrified, to do these things. But then there's another deeper part of me that knows I can do this. It's you can have that vision. And even though you don't know how you're going to get there or you're not comfortable, there's a part that has this inner knowing, I could do that. So I've definitely, stepped forward and taken action even when I felt terrified. I remember leading up to that workshop, I was so nervous at one point, I was avoiding putting together the content outline. I was just frozen. I really felt paralyzed. I couldn't move. I ended up calling a friend to come over and being like, can you just sit with me so I can just talk out my ideas for this workshop and just be there with me every step of the way. It was that scary for me. But then, I did it. People came in. They were so excited to see me. They were so happy for the workshop. We began with introductions. Everyone shared what they did, what they wanted to learn, why they were so excited. I shared a little bit of content, some ideas, and we went around and shared our thoughts. And it was okay, I can do this, And also with publicity, I remember with my very first interview, a client who I really loved was like, Selena, you're awesome. I want to email my whole list about you and do a Skype video interview. And I knew it was an amazing opportunity. But then a part of me was like, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is be seen on video. I'm about helping other people do that. It's not about me. But then I was like, you know what, let me give this a try because it feels like more of a safe environment. This person, really is my advocate. And so I did the interview and I was scared because when you've never ever done something like that before, it's scary, And I watched it later with my interns. I had them taking notes because I was having issues back then with filler words. So I was saying things like, so. And so they were counting. And while they were counting, I was I had my hands over my face. I was watching a horror movie. And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible because I was talking so fast. I couldn't maintain eye contact. I was kind of looking up and down and in my head and nervous energy. And meanwhile, my interns are tallying all of, my screw ups. And I think we're at 137 filler words. And I'm like, okay, I got it, And I was like, there's no way I can release this interview. It's such a train wreck, such a disaster. I got to see if my client will delete it. And, one of my interns said to me, honestly, I don't think it was that bad. I actually think you had some really interesting things to say. I think it could help a lot of people. I think that people would like this. And then, I don't know, I just remember being so stunned in that moment. And over time, I kind of realized a couple of, big lessons. So number one is things are usually not as bad as you think. Even if you got filler words, that's part of like a natural conversation. And, you know, I literally, rather than being like, let me watch this interview, I'm so proud of myself, let's see how I did, it was my first time, I was like, okay, like having my interns literally like tally up all the ways I messed up, and me like just really scrutinizing it to see where, you know, I screwed up, right? So it's usually better than we think. And then the second thing is that you're only going to get better over time. So, you know, the people that I was following were like these people that were great on camera, great on stages, but they'd also been doing this for like 10 years, or even 20 years. So on day one with my first interview, how am I going to be at their level? You know, obviously not. I only get better over time. So it was giving myself permission to not be perfect and understanding that, you know, through practice you get better. And then the third thing is I realized that it was so much about me. I wasn't even thinking about what I was saying. I was like, let me look at how do I look? What's my eye contact like? How many filler words did I use? And really when you're doing these interviews or sharing your knowledge, it's about your audience, you know? And so nowadays when I do things, like I just kind of take a step back, especially with these interviews, especially when there's video. And I just like, rather than scrutinize how I did, I'm like, okay, like, did I show up and give my all? Did I put my heart into this? Did I share, you know, interesting stories and valuable advice that could really help people in a deep and meaningful way? If the answer is yes to those questions, then I did an amazing job and it's all good. And, you know, no regrets. I'm going to keep on moving forward. So, you know, mindset is really huge. It's what stops people from being seen and getting publicity. And, you know, I can really relate to this personally because I was also that person that was really afraid of being in the spotlight.
I love this. And I love how you just offhandedly mentioned, oh, you know, I had my team go for my first interview that I did and like, you know, point out all the mistakes, which is, again, that's something maybe it's natural to you, but that's what nobody does. Like, you know, like, and you don't have to have a team because like you could be, oh, maybe Selena has a team. No,
well, it was like a free unpaid intern. So, but yeah, so it could be anyone.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, if you have, you know, you've done an interview, you can have your friends look over, you know, listen over it. You can have, you know, your business friends, your spouse. Like, you know, I sometimes ask my girlfriend is like, hey, can you read through this and let me know what's working and what's not working? And if she stops reading, I know like, okay, there's something I can, you know, improve. So I love all of those ideas in there. And also I want to highlight one more thing, you know, as we wrap up. I know you're launching your Impacting Millions program right now, and I think it's an amazing program on publicity. And I intentionally didn't talk about it that much during this interview, and here's the intention why. Because I wanted to show people how you work as a person. And having gone through the program, you know, a couple of times and listened to all the interviews and seeing the community, I know that, you know, kind of feedback and hard work, everything that you're doing with Impacting Millions and passion for excellence, like your Impacting Millions program is like passion for excellence personified, because all the things we were talking about today, I've seen you apply to Impacting Millions. From the fact that, for example, you're doing videos right now for this launch, even though you might have been terrified of video in the past. So you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you're growing in that aspect. From the fact that you reached out to me 6 months ago in October to work on those videos and went back and forth for, you know, a few weeks to make them really good, to really impact as many people as possible. From the fact that you have media mentor webinars in the program, which basically means you can go in there, pitch your ideas, and people give you feedback. So you too can get that type of feedback. So you're like, oh, you know, I don't know how to get feedback on my pitches. Well, now you've created this amazing program that's a 1-year program or a 6-month program, depending on how you look at it. Like, you have all of these opportunities and you're really trying to make people a huge success. I've also heard you talk about how after each video that you record, after each Q&A call, you go through the call with your team, you look at the questions, and you see how you can improve the program in the future. And that's one of the biggest qualities that you have, and that's why I think not only is your program incredibly amazing, but it's only going to get better in the future because of this, you know, approach that you have to excellence. And I think that is more important, you know, than most things. So if you know that you want to do guest posts, you want to do podcasts, things like that, I think you're the best person to learn from, just because, first of all, you've created an amazing course, but you also lead by example of what excellence looks like. And that's what I wanted to say about your program.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really have an obsession, and I'm really paying close attention to what questions are my students asking in the Q&A calls. You know, in the group, where are people feeling stuck? Where are they, needing help? Things like that. So yeah, I always want to make it like I don't know, there's so much thought that goes into course creation. From like when I start, with any one of my modules, like I think about, okay, what are people's limiting beliefs? What are some things I need to break down for them or have them release so that they can receive this information? What are the mindset shifts that need to happen? And then what are some interesting and fun stories that I can tell that are going to get them to laugh or are going to get them to think about this in a more exciting way? How can I paint the possibilities for them so they feel more motivated to take action? How can I break it down so there's quick wins that they can achieve right away? So it's really like an art form. And I have, I'm not the kind of person that has like a dozen online programs. I mean, I think it's great if people have that. But for me, like, I'll like launch one program and spend like 3 years perfecting it. And then I'll continuously make tiny updates maybe, but then it's like, okay, I've got my base, but I'm always like paying attention to what people need. And based on that, kind of fine tuning until until I feel like it's truly excellent.
I love this. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely check out the video workshop that I did. I know that Primaj will be sharing that with you guys, and I'm doing something really cool. So for one lucky person who opts in to watch the workshop series and then answers a couple questions, very simple multiple choice questions, as well as one long form question, you have a chance to win all expenses paid trip to New York City, where I'll be paying for your hotel, your flight, and inviting you to a really cool influencer and media dinner party where you can meet some of the awesome people in my network. So I thought that would be really fun, and I'm excited to see who enters the competition, and also excited to really share this content. I've shared, the videos with other people, and they're like, okay, this is kind of like a mini course in and of itself. Like, you've already given me like so much information to start getting publicity. So I definitely recommend that you check that out, because that's not going to be up forever, but it will be up during the launch period. So I know that Primaj will share that information with you with the release of this interview.
Yeah, and I remember pushing you to share more information in sequence so we could make it into this super valuable mini course. So
yeah,
I can attest to that. And I can also say, having been at your influencer dinners before, they are incredible. Those are the places where you meet all of these editors, or, I'm not sure who's going to be at that dinner, but it's like when you talk about people, when you go to a place and you see people sitting next to you on the table having a great conversation, and then in the middle of the conversation, they're like, hey, by the way, I'm an editor at Forbes. It really changes your view around, how the business world works. And it helps you build those genuine relationships that can lead to all of these opportunities. So I do think that's a once in a lifetime opportunity for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. So where can people find you? I will be linking to your stuff and emailing it out, but just in case, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can go to selenasoo.com to learn more about me, and also impactingmillions.com. So during my launch, the video series will be up there. And when the cart opens, there'll also be an opportunity to enroll in the program at impactingmillions.com.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today, and have an amazing week, Selena.
Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye.